You know, I've been using the Osmo Pocket 3 for nearly 2 years now, and in that time I've made more videos with this camera than any other one that I own. And at the start I got myself all bogged down with things like the 180-degree shutter rule, using perfect LUTs, spending ages colour grading my footage, and all for a talking headshot like this. And here's the thing, that was a complete waste of time. So if you're trying to make your talking heads like a Hollywood blockbuster, then I'm here to tell you, you're wasting your time. There is a far easier way to do it, and that's by trusting all of the automatic modes in the camera, with one exception, and I'll talk about that. But instead of wasting time trying to colour grade footage, why don't you spend more time telling a great story so that your viewers get engaged in it? Sound like a plan? So I know what you're thinking, using auto modes is cheating. But if that's really the case, why would DJI spend so much time working these things out and putting it in the camera? They are there to be used and they are there to help you. Now don't get me wrong, you can take stunning cinematic footage with this camera, and I'll show you some examples of that later on in the video. But when it comes to doing talking headshots, getting in and out as quickly as possible, then using your auto modes is going to make it so much easier for you. And let's face it, if you're somebody who is completely obsessed with the 180-degree shutter rule, making sure that everything's absolutely spot on, worrying about your motion blur, then let's be honest, you're going to be using a cine camera and you're not going to be using a Pocket 3. Here, ducky, ducky, ducky. Can ducks attack? Okay, so let's break it down. When you press record on the Osmo Pocket 3, you're really asking it to deal with a number of settings, and they're basically your resolution, your frame rate, your ISO, your shutter speed, your colour profile, and your focus. And most of those things you don't even need to worry about, because the only one that I worry about out of all of those is the colour profile. And I shoot on D-Log, so I've got a little bit more control when I get back to the editing software. Everything else, I let the Osmo Pocket 3 do what I paid it to do. Okay, so let's have a look at the settings. There's nothing new here, just swipe in from the right. We'll look at the exposure, and if we turn it over to manual, gives you full control. Lots of fiddling about, but the dream here is to just select the auto mode and then let it do it for you. Fixes the exposure, and if you want to take control of your auto ISO here, then you set it. My personal preference is 50 to 400. White balance next, and if you want it in manual, you can spend all day picking the right one. Whereas I like to just hit the auto button, let it do its thing, and then trust it. Simples. Colour profiles next, and you can either have it on the normal mode, which does it for you automatically, you can have it in HLG, or as I recommend, leave it in D-Log, give yourself a little bit more control. Next you pick your focus mode, I like to leave it on continuous, and finally there are a couple of extra settings in here if you want to play about with the noise reduction or the digital sharpening. Personally, I'd rather do this in post-processing, so I have my noise reduction at -1 and my sharpness at -2. And those are the settings. So the main things that you want to dial in is your resolution. Always 4K. If you go anything less than that, yeah, your files get smaller, but you start to lose a lot of the detail in the image, and if you try to punch in or zoom in on your image, it starts to fall apart really quickly. So always use 4K. So the next thing is your frame rate. Now I tend to shoot my YouTube videos at 30 frames per second, so therefore when I set up the Osmo Pocket 3, it's either 1/30, or if I'm going for some slow motion to play about with later on in the edit, then I'll shoot at 1/60. And the last thing you need to concern yourself with is your colour profile. Now as I've already said, I shoot in D-Log, and the reason I do that is a flatter profile, it preserves all the details in the shadows, it helps me preserve the details in the highlights, and when I get it back to the editing software, I can play about with it that bit more. And it's also really good if I want to put some creative LUTs on it. But everything else, I leave it to auto. So when it comes to shutter speed, I leave that on auto, and I have done throughout this video. And we've shot in shade, we've shot in sunlight, and I'm letting the Pocket 3 make the decision on what the best exposure is. Now the only time that becomes a little bit of a problem is if I make a mistake and I have to do a hard cut in the middle of a sentence, and then if the light has changed, you can pick up on that. But there are ways to mask and hide that. Next we look at ISO. That I've got squarely on automatic mode at the moment, but instead of letting it run riot and run all the way up to 12,800 or 6,400, I set parameters, and I don't like it to run any more than 100 all the way through to 400, and I let the camera make its decision based on the scene where it should be. And if it gets to the upper limit of 400, then it maybe start playing about with the shutter speed, and again you're getting a nice balanced image. And as long as it's not a very, very dramatic shift in light, you shouldn't ever notice. Then we have white balance. Now, purists will tell you that you should always dial your white balance in. If it's cloudy, set it for cloudy. If it's sunny, set it for sunny. Now, that does make a lot of sense, but when you've got changing conditions and your hands are away from the camera, then choosing the auto white balance makes perfect sense. It will make great decisions based on the software that's in the camera, and again, I've yet to have a problem with it. So I trust it implicitly. There's never been an issue that I've had where I can't correct the footage later on. And again, because we shoot in D-Log, it gives us a little bit more control should we have any issues. So the last setting is focus, and that one is probably a bit of a no-brainer. There are 3 settings on the Osmo Pocket. You can have it on single focus, where you choose your focus point and it won't change, which is great if you want to focus on maybe a tree or a house and you walk into the distance and you start to get a bit of depth of field. So the Pocket 3 is a very intelligent and capable camera, and unless you like fiddling about with dials, buttons and screens, then trust the auto modes. If you trust it, it will take care of you. So what does it actually look like when you compare the footage side by side? Now, I've compared hours and hours of footage, and yes, if you take the time, you use the ND filters, you set the right shutter speed, all of that, it looks slightly better. But again, when you're talking about a headshot, is it really worth the time and effort? Because when I do spend that amount of time fiddling about with ND filters, the light changes, I need to change that, I drop one, look for the other one, put it back on, then change the shutter speed, dial in the white balance. It just becomes such an arduous task that I can't really be bothered going out. So just slap it on auto, trust the Pocket 3 to do its thing, and you'll get comparable footage that, unless you're pixel peeping, nobody's ever going to know. And that tip I told you about earlier on, the sun died away there in the middle of a cut, and all I've done is put a transition between the 2 bits of footage, and hopefully it wasn't too jarring. And as I'm speaking, the sun's coming out and I'm letting the Pocket 3 deal with that. So I'm guessing you're like me. It's about telling stories, it's about making videos and sharing your passion with your viewer. It's not about IRE tables, it's not about exposure, it's not about ND filters. It's about getting out there, having fun and trying to get your passion across. So after all that, where do we land? Well, I'm hoping after watching this video, you will start to trust the auto modes too, because that's what's important, not the friction of playing about with dials, knobs, sliders, and then spending countless hours when you get home trying to make your footage look great. But further to that, it makes editing when you get home an absolute breeze. You don't have to match scenes to scenes because the camera is doing all of the work for you. And this video has taken me about a quarter of the time that it took me when I first started out and I tried to use all the manual modes. So remember, using auto modes doesn't mean you're a cheat. It doesn't mean you're any less of a filmmaker. It just means you're focused on telling your story. So get out there, grab your Pocket 3, slap on all the auto modes, but remember, shoot in D-Log. Give yourself that little bit of safety net for when you get home. Well, I hope that was useful, guys, and if you've enjoyed the video, please give me a thumbs up and consider hitting that subscribe button. And if you'd like to know a little bit more about the D-Log versus the auto colour, then I'd watch this video here, because the difference isn't as staggering as you might think.